Welcome back to Visit My Voices Live, and I'm not muted for once at the very beginning of the show. Joined today, of course, by Mr. Bombastic. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm complex.
Dude, it's 2023.
2023 sounds like one of those years that a film from the 70s would have suggested was Blade Runner-esque, and we're chasing mutants and cyborgs, and there has been 2 alien invasions. So I think I'm just going to vote for either we need the comet now, right? Or we are in that simulation because this isn't real.
I don't know, man. I'm still pissed off about flying cars and like how we've conceptually kind of realized that's never going to happen now. I feel like I was lied to.
So the problem is, like, forget about terrorists. I'm saying like the old guy who won't surrender his license.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's good practical reasons that we just need to probably work in the other direction here. Teleportation is a necessary evil at this point.
I'm good with, if we can't get to teleportation, give me those vacuum tubes that they have at the bank to get me places.
Sure. And frankly, I'm fine with my DNA being a little more fly-y than it is right now. So it's all good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it didn't do anything bad for Jeff Goldblum's career, did it?
No. And if we're being honest, he really enjoyed being a fly. I mean, that's the part they don't talk about in the movie, is he was really digging it.
No, and listen, to be completely honest with you, that was going to go nowhere with Gina Davis anyway, right? We know that in real life. So maybe you should have just spat on her and ate what result.
Exactly.
I don't know. So I guess 2022. My problem is there's certain years that seem like real turning points for me, right? Like, so 2001, for obvious reasons. I kind of think of my life before 2001 and after 2001. 9/11 was a really big deal, and kind of how I viewed the world was different. So another year would be 2020. Now, it may technically should be 2019, but for me, it was 2020 when it really sank home that this thing that the whole world went through was really going to change everything after. So this is another pivot point year. 2 years in, we were promised this was the year that everything was getting back to normal. It still felt like Looney Tunes to me.
I don't know if normal ever comes back, if I'm being 100% honest with you. This will forever be a before and after situation, like you just said. 2001, before and after. I think people just live differently now.
Do you think this is like Nirvana Nevermind has come out and now everything's different?
I do. I think that you're always going to see the masks. I think that's going to be just a lingering thing. It's not going to be required anywhere or anything, but it'll be just like the Asian countries where they wear them frequently. You'll have that.
And I mean, I don't have any judgment on that at all because I believe everyone should do whatever makes them most comfortable. My thing is, I guess we are kind of slowly turning into that dystopia, right?
Yeah.
And it is kind of insidious how it's happening and what we'll be willing to accept. And that comes from both sides of the political spectrum, if that's how you want to look at it. I don't even look at it as a political thing. I look at it as we were searching for meaning all of our lives in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And all that changed in the last 2 decades so fundamentally. First, our sense of security. After 9/11, I was looking at the sky all the time.
Mm-hmm.
As irrational as it was that like a plane was going to decide to hit, the shopping mall I was in.
But it happened, right?
Right.
Like,
right. And now it's like the menace is not something we can even turn our noses to the sky and just kind of peer at.
well, man, I had said for kind of years leading up to that it is amazing that we haven't had some sort of huge airborne virus outbreak that could take, even worse than COVID, honestly, if we're being 100%. There's nothing stopping it. It's just the right virus mutates and goes airborne and we're all toast. And I think that's what 2020 kind of taught everybody again is, hey, you're a guest here. It can reject you at any time.
It's just a rock. There's nothing special about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think 2020 was a great year for film for accidental reasons. Like all the big studios shut down. They didn't dare release anything to just drive-ins and to the few theaters that could be open. So they kind of just went into this stall pattern, right? But all the indies were like, okay, we can give you product.
Yeah.
And so some of those films that would have frankly snuck under the radar for everyone but Dan Shine got out on theater screens. If you were going to the drive-in, you saw some films on theaters that would never have gotten theatrical releases.
We had you had $100,000 number one box office weekends.
Absolutely.
And you can't take that away from those directors either. They had a number one movie in America.
Yeah, and it was overall, I think it was a positive thing because I think we are at the point where we're starting to get so overstimulated by the event films that we don't care anymore. No. Avatar 2 has been out, and I'm not going to make this into a Jim Cameron thing because last time we were together alone on a stream, it was. But it was very seriously, it was like you'd have, how to put this best? You'd have a film like Avatar 2 come out, which should be this huge deal, and everyone should be talking about it because it's it's going to be the biggest film of the year, right? But it might still lose money, by the way, in reality. But it isn't something anyone is really talking about.
That's a symptom, I think, of the first movie being as underwhelming as it was. We've had 9 years to sit on that movie. You go in and see this movie in a theater in IMAX 3D. It's shocking. It really is. It's an experience. Problem is, you come home and put Avatar in, and it's just a mediocre movie.
Yeah.
So you got to ask yourself: Do you want to go sit for 3 hours and be bored out of your mind, but you're going to go ooh and ah? Because that's legitimately what's going to happen with that movie.
If I were to tell you, 2 weeks after Darkman came out in what was that 1990, that Sam Raimi would be making a Doctor Strange movie.
Right.
Your excitement level would have been through the roof. That happened this year, and our reaction was, "Oh, okay."
Well, I found out after I'd quit the MCU stuff. I watched everything up to that first Endgame, okay, and I realized really quick after that I did not have the want or need to do that ever again. To watch 20 movies to get to another one. It was fun one time. We did it collectively as a society. It was a good time. It's time to move on.
Yeah, and honestly, the momentum of it was carrying a lot of the lesser entries, right?
Yes, and that's the problem is the lesser entries were very well-known entries in that first phase. Then you had shit like Shang-Chi that we've got to get off the ground here, right? Like, and you're asking me to care, but you just killed off, you know, characters that people came to see these movies for.
So, I mean, I don't want to get all like writer nerd on everyone here, but I will for just a second. The problem the new films are having is that they need to go by the standard, origin story beats because there is no other choice. I'm sorry, people think there's another choice, but there really isn't for the very specific form that Marvel has. That's why on the DC side, that's why you got to kill the Waynes every 10 years, right?
But I mean, Marlon Wayans, we got to kill him.
Oh, well, that would be a good start. But I think we're tired of it. There's been how many films in that franchise? It's over 20. I don't know exactly the number.
Well, do you remember what a big deal a comic book movie was 20 years ago? I mean, that was an event. Like when the X-Men came out, Blade, that was huge.
Batman changed summer blockbusters.
Yeah. But, we were only getting one of those movies every few years. Now you're getting 3 or 4 every year. And if you don't watch those movies, the ones that you do want to watch, you're going to be lost. It's kind of genius the way they set it up. Look, you got to go see Shang-Chi if you want to know what's going to happen in the next fucking Iron Man movie, which I know isn't a thing now. But like that's the way they're doing it. It's like if you want to understand this come time when the entire culture is talking about it, come watch this movie.
So I think the thing is, though, we're tired of the big spectacle movies because we now believe anything can be put on screen. It's going to look false to our eyes on a fundamental level because the human mind can detect fake very well. But anything can get on screen. So it's not like the first time we saw the White House explode in Independence Day's trailer, right? Where you were like, I have to see that movie.
Yep.
That is Earth versus the Flying Saucers, but it looks photoreal.
Yep.
Right?
That's a miniature too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, or the first time you saw the T-Rex in Jurassic Park.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So you didn't have to do anything more than that for just the shock and awe of, oh my God, the kid who loved dinosaurs growing up, which is every kid growing up, finally got to see a photoreal dinosaur on the big screen. And it didn't look like stop motion. And it didn't look like a man in a suit or, a costume on a dog. It looked like the real thing.
And then we found out dinosaurs were fucking turkeys.
Well, not the T-Rex, though. They've backed off of that one.
He was feathered. We do know that.
We've
got there's quills on
juveniles. On juveniles.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
but
whatever.
We know he wasn't a big lizard. But my thing is collectively as a society, we said, you know what? Let's keep the old dinosaurs. Fuck them new ones that we know are like scientifically accurate.
Right.
Give me my big lizard.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're monster movies.
Yeah.
Like, get real. They're monster movies. They're not nature documentaries. But that's the whole point too, right? A Jurassic World film came out this year. And here's the thing, like, as the writer in me, they tried something different. Oh my God, it doesn't follow the same story beats as all the previous films. Okay, that's a good start. But you know what? You know why no one really likes that movie? I mean, really cherishes that movie, holds it in high regard, however you want to put it. We've seen everything incredible that in the film done before. Yeah. Ultimately, it still feels like a variation because film is a visual medium. And when you get to the point where you can put anything on screen that you can think up, you just need, the rendering hours. A lot of the magic is truly, honestly gone from that type of filmmaking.
It's a shame, too, because the concept for that movie is kind of genius, because I could totally see big business doing that, genetically modifying a type of ancient locust to eat the competitor's crops.
Right.
Like, that's got Monsanto written all over it.
It also does one thing that I think only the first film does well, is that it adds satire back to the franchise. Like, you could say that, like, Jurassic World in some vague way is a kind of anti-Disney World statement.
Yeah.
But it's real slight. And it doesn't really play. This film tried to do something. And I don't even think it made a lot of wrong moves as much as it feels old. And that's the one franchise that can't afford to feel old.
Yeah.
A James Bond film can feel familiar, and that's probably okay. Jurassic Park can't, because it was built on innovation.
See, James Bond's another one of those things that I'm going to say we need to shelve for a little bit.
I would agree with that.
We just need to put that up, let people miss it a little bit.
Or we should face facts that perhaps the morality of James Bond is that Cold War morality is not going to play today, and we should just love what we have and build something for the world that we actually live in.
I don't know if it's not on my list, and I'm positive it's not on yours, but I don't know if you saw Glass Onion this year.
I did not. I did not like the first film.
I'm going to tell you to reach out and watch it anyway, because I prefer Glass Onion and Knives Out because of the spotlight it puts on the Benoit Blanc character.
Yeah.
Fleshes him out a little bit more. It's a fun movie. I would much rather see Daniel Craig doing that than Bond movies.
Well, that's the good news, is you're going to get your wish.
Yeah.
Well, so let's just talk about some of our favorites from this year, because I think we've set the table well enough that I don't think either of our lists are going to have big event films on them, really.
I mean, mine are going to have a couple that are tropey, but like...
Well, I mean, let's start with one that's not on my list, but I think is good, emblematic of the year, which is that I think Top Gun had no right to be a good film, and it was. And I think that's distressing, almost, because it means that you could still make those kind of summer blockbusters that really work. But you know what? Maybe we shouldn't even be trying for a Top Gun. Maybe that's a once-in-a-generation throwback. I don't know. I would just say that it's something we got to be very careful about. But I think all the other big franchise releases of the year, I can't tell anyone to see any of them. Top Gun is the only one I would say, and I hated the first Top Gun. So it was an interesting.
I didn't get the big deal with Top Gun, man. Like, I watched it. Like, that's a Tom Cruise movie through and through. Like, I don't get what the big deal was.
About the new one?
Yeah.
It feels like a real movie, and nothing feels like a real movie anymore.
Yeah, I guess so. That's got to be it, because I think under regular circumstances, Top Gun Maverick doesn't make $2 billion.
I think the problem is people are just tired of things that feel false or one note or over marketed. Like making Top Gun 2, first of all, it doesn't even make sense from a marketing standpoint, right? That was a Cold War, like, fantasy jingoistic thing. Making it today makes no sense whatsoever, but they found the way in. And that's what I always say. Good writers can do anything. Now, that said, it's written by one of my least favorite writers on the planet. But that's okay. I mean, this is the guy who gave you Scream 3 and the Ring remake. So, but, credit where it's due. Aaron Kruger, you did a good job.
The Ring remake is not that bad.
It is.
It's not that bad.
It really is.
I've now seen the entire Ring series. It's not that bad.
It is.
It's the third best one.
No.
Like, Ringu is really good.
Ringu
and Zero.
Zero is amazing.
Zero's the shit. And then the American remake.
No, I'd say Ringu 2 is
what, not Spiral?
Not Spiral. Ringu 2 is it fails in its franchise in the trilogy to be outstanding, but on its own it's pretty damn solid. I don't know. I would take Ring versus Grudge over that. So I don't know. I really don't like the American film. I really do not.
I dig it, man. Yeah, I think, but
did you see it? You saw it first, though, right?
I did. I saw it in theaters when I was 13, so it scared the shit out of me.
So that plays a big role there.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But the Ringu films, I saw those last year. Like, those are very new to me, and they're very good. That
trilogy, the original trilogy, not dumb.
That sucker's out of print now, and it is a shame, because that was like a $40 set that got you 4 great Japanese horror movies.
Well, 3 great Japanese horror films and one weird science fiction spinoff based on a novel.
It's not even advertised like on the box that movie's on there.
Well, because no one would buy it. Yeah. But for it. The only thing about that box that pisses me off is that they had an opportunity to make a true complete Ring set.
Yeah, with all the Versus films and
the Versus films, the 2 Sadako films, actually there's 3 Sadako films because they're on another new trilogy now.
Is it Ring or it's Juon that does the TV movies, right?
Yeah, that's Juon. Although there was a Ringu was adapted to television before the theatrical film about 4 years earlier. I have it on Laserdisc without subs.
It gets muddy with those
And
Japanese
then
releases.
and then there is a Thai adaptation as well. So I mean, that was just called Ring Virus. So I mean, I would love to have had all of them in a box, right? That would have been just great. I'd be done forever. It'd be cool.
Yeah.
But it is a great set.
I think they knew at the price they'd have to sell it at. Like, what are they really going to get out of that?
Honestly, as long as I got Ringu 2 and Ringu 0, I was going to be over the moon no matter what, because it's hard to think of another trilogy in horror that's as strong as that is.
It's pretty fucking... They don't make movies like that in any country anymore that are just legitimately fucking creepy. From the time the credits hit, you know something's off.
Yeah, but it's funny because we have no proper perspective on a lot of things, which is what also helps that movie. It's like, and that's kind of why I don't like the American film as much. Like the idea of something ancient and maybe alien, who knows, however you want to define that, in the ocean is the reason Sadako even exists. And you have the nursery rhyme about goblins be thine. All that being removed. And it's just like something weird happened on a farm. I'm like, what are we doing?
I didn't mind the whole well thing.
Well, the well thing's in both versions.
Yeah, but I mean, I just didn't mind how they did it in the American remake. Now, Rings, Vincent D'Onofrio coming in to give us all his backstory and shit, that destroyed the American franchise for sure.
Well,
2 did too, and that's the original Japanese director, isn't it?
Yeah, Hideo Nakata, yeah. Ringu 2 I have issues with, but I also understand what they were trying to do. Rings is a film that has a lot of good ideas. And it's kind of like The Last Jedi in that I think I'll endorse all the ideas, but none of the execution. So,
yeah.
But I'm not a Star Wars guy, so of course I can say that. Anyway, we should talk about some movies
that came out in 2022, right? Instead of stuff that came out 20 years ago?
But doesn't that say everything about where we normally think we're at in movies? At least domestic film. So, what was some of your high points of the year?
I'm going to go ahead and set this one off because I saw it in the comments earlier and you've already brought it up. My number 10 is Scream 5, or 5 Cream, however you prefer to say it. And I have no justification for that, by the way. I didn't come on here to defend that. I'm just telling you I really like that movie. I watched it again last night. It's, to me, Scream's a franchise. You know, I had very different opinions on that movie when it was announced, but now I'm totally in. Like, I'm down. It's not high art. And when you think about it, none of them are.
No.
At least they gave us a break.
It is a Scream film through and through. That's the problem. I mean, I don't want to relitigate the original Scream, but, you know, Scream came with a price tag, at a heavy price tag for the genre. Everything looked like Scream for about 5 years afterwards. And
nobody could do Scream.
And that might have been a good thing. Maybe it challenged some people, but I don't like any of that wave. Like, I really, I mean,
no,
maybe the Faculty I like, if you want to include that, but it's not a slasher thing.
Yeah, but see, I think The Faculty. Do you think Kevin Williamson wrote that?
It was a treatment.
Thinking Scream vibes. Do you think he's the reason there's Scream vibes on it? Because that doesn't feel like that was set out to be that way. And I like The Faculty.
I think it fits into the wave, but it stands kind of at the corner of it. Yeah. Like
it's doing
kind of its own thing. Yeah. And I'll even say, like, I think that the third act of that is weak, but I like the film up to that point so much I don't care. But that whole wave came down to the fact that, wow, you know, people were so hungry for just a basic horror film. It didn't have to be a slasher film. I really don't believe it had to be. I think if it had been a ghost story that connected at that point, it would have been that.
We went through that portion of time too, where the ghost story was the ultimate in horror for a long time.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago. It just depends on the movie that grabs people.
Sure. I mean, so the funny thing is we have a bunch going on in the horror genre at that time that people forget about. So we have Scream, we have Sixth Sense, and we have Blair Witch, all converging within just a couple of years of each other, really. It's like within a 4-year period, yeah, just bam, 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 these mega hits. But Scream's the only one that really put oxygen into the room. Like you didn't see a lot of Blair Witch cash-in attempts that were honestly of any caliber, right?
Well, there was that backlash to Blair Witch that happened that doesn't get talked about often now. We're doing revisionist history, not
Right.
us, but I'm saying the community as a whole. Everybody loves Blair Witch now. But if you go back to 99, 2000, there were a lot of people who were pissed that they got tricked.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we didn't see with Paranormal Activity because the cat was out of the bag already. But there was this hate for Blair Witch because people were duped.
And that comes down to one of my basic rules about this stuff. Don't review the film that you wish it was. Review the film they actually made. And on its own, Blair is pretty strong. I mean, it's a pretty complete experience, which is why sequels were, of course, both impossible and inevitable. I really like the second film. I think
love
it's creative.
Book of Shadows. I know we were there on that.
Yeah, it's really creative. It's smart. It fumbles the ball a few times. People talk about the studio interference. That's not the problem with the movie, because I've seen the film both ways. I mean, I haven't seen the official version, but there's a bunch of fan edits that take out all the studio scenes. And I think the movie does need a few more jolts to the system to work. So I think the studio had the right idea. I don't think Berlinger had his heart in making those scenes.
I was just
they come off as.
I love Joe Berlinger. I love his documentaries, but I don't think he was the guy for this. Well, I love Paradise Lost. Let's put it that way. I love those series.
I disagree with his central premise, so it's hard for me.
We've had this discussion,
but whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, anyway, I think we can both agree that he's a competent documentary filmmaker.
Sure.
And this wasn't the project for him.
I'm glad Blair Witch 2 exists because it almost, if in time, it's more respected, it'll show people that sequels don't have to be cut, repeat, paste. You know, which I would actually like, which is the Scream problem. This is where we're getting to Scream, right? So I didn't need a Scream 2, let alone a Scream 5 or this year's Scream 6. So for me, I went, of course I have the pass, so I didn't pay for it. So that's good. And I love the directors. Radio Silence are some of my, I mean, they made Ready or Not, which instantly means I have to see everything they ever make ever from now on, because I think that film's a masterpiece. But Jesus Christ, it was just a Scream movie. And I don't have a taste for Scream. So
it's a little eerie how close that movie is. I mean, if you look at the series as a whole, part 3 is the only one that really sticks out. Otherwise, I think you could tell me that the entire thing was written by one person.
Do you know, I remember so little about Scream 3. I think I've only seen that film once.
I honestly think I have too.
I remember there's something at a pool party where the house explodes or something, right?
Well, there's Jay and Silent Bob in it. That was the number one thing that I remember.
I remember that, and Carrie Fisher shows up, right?
Yep. Yeah, she's working like a file room or some shit. And the
that makes
killer
sense.
is her long lost brother that we've never heard of. You see, that one sticks out as bad.
Well, the second film, all I remember is the ending of the second film. I remember like the revelation of the killer. I'm like, oh, so now they mentioned Friday 13th in the original film, so now they're just doing Friday 13th. Yeah, that's what they're doing here.
They had to give Aunt Jackie a backstory, buddy. I mean,
oh, Jesus Christ, it's so bad to me. And the worst thing about Scream for me, and this to give 5 a little bit of credit, they didn't hang too heavy on this time, but the soap opera aspects of Scream, I loathe. I'm sorry.
Odd. Very odd for somebody who likes Saw for its soap opera quality.
Right, because and Twin Peaks for soap opera qualities, right? But with Scream, it's like for a series that's supposed to be so meta and self-aware, it's utterly unaware of its sentimentality being so broad and stupid. I mean, I don't care about those characters. I mean, you have the third or fourth. One of those films ends with a marriage proposal. No horror film should ever end with a marriage proposal. I'm going to put that.
Oh, is it when Dewey
that
proposes?
Needs to be chiseled on a rock somewhere.
There's problems with the movie, like undoubtedly, there's huge problems with it. I just had a good time with it, man. And this could be
And
because I watched it again last night. That I'm like, it's recency bias, but
that's cool. That's cool. It's not my thing. And I, you know, before we went on the air, we actually briefly mentioned Scream, and I said, you know, we covered Scream for 5 minutes this year total on this channel. Now we've done more than that.
I brought the quote up.
No, that's cool. I think it's important to say that that was kind of the beginning of the year, and for a lot of people, it was a big event movie. For me, it was probably always going to be a miss. I was just holding out hope because of the directors, and I did really give this one a chance because I love Ready or Not.
I
I
was
was really bummed.
I did kind of the opposite. I was very vocal against this movie when it was announced, just because I'm done with that, right? Like, in Scream 4 was so underwhelming to me that I was just like, well, I don't think we need anymore. But sometimes when I go in with that attitude and something is not dog shit, I have a tendency to hold it much higher because I'm like, can you believe that just fucking happened?
There's things in it that are pretty dog shit, though, so I'm not going to go there. And by the way, I was just having this conversation earlier today, actually, very briefly. I don't require films to be logically sound. I like the idea of drama being able to take us into places that are impossible. So that does necessitate sometimes that the rules of logic and reason don't always have to be the bedrock of a film. Um, I think we're going to talk a little bit when we go through kind of the stuff I loved about a film that has some logic problems to it. But it doesn't matter because it's wrapped up in its own kind of storytelling world and it makes its own logic. And I kind of miss that. You know, Lucio Fulci made great films that people go, oh, well, they don't make any sense. They make plenty of sense if you're buying into their internal logic. If you want our logic that helps you get through life, yeah, you're sunk. You're done.
All I know is somebody's going to get something in the eye, buddy.
That's right.
I'm watching Lucio Fulci.
And that's kind of what I think the Scream films need to do is they need to find their logic because they keep setting themselves in the quote unquote real world. And it's kind of the shark problem in Jaws. Like, how many times can a giant shark attack the same community?
I have an idea for the screenwriter. I know they're filming it right now. I'm sure they're watching. If you want
get out
to
your
actually
highlighters, guys,
shake it up, right? That was like a shake weight thing. I didn't like that. And make it different. Let's not find out who the killers are. Maybe they get away at the end of the movie.
Well, I've not a great film, but that Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the beginning, the prequel to the remake, the fact that everyone dies and Leatherface just walks off into the distance like Indiana Jones. I mean, people don't give that film enough credit for what it just did there. It kind of said you showed up to see a tragedy, so we're going to give you the tragedy. And horror doesn't often do that. I mean, there's films like Burial Ground that did it. You could argue that Fulci's Zombie does it, but mostly you get happy endings. You know what a film that does it that doesn't get credit for it? Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake.
Yeah, it does, because you get that they get to the island after
they end up in Fulci's Zombie, which is fucking hilarious. And I don't think anyone gets that. I think they just think, okay, they got the island they kept talking about in Day of the Dead, basically. But no, it's good stuff.
Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, underrated. Well, not underrated. It's getting its love. It used to be underrated.
I like that film a lot. I don't the whole dead unborn child scene, undead dead,
zombie baby's the low point of the movie.
Yeah, that doesn't work at all. But the rest of the film works really, really well. Like, so much better than it should.
And the payoff on that is terrible, because that's like one of the most legit issues I think people would have, is how are medical issues handled, like having a baby during a zombie apocalypse, and they fumble that so horribly.
Yeah, and it's weird because the rest of the film is so well written. Yeah. All the communication on the rooftop and all that stuff, I love all that. And that's why that hashtag alive Korean film that basically borrowed that whole concept and turned that segment of that movie into a whole movie. I don't know. I think Zack Snyder's gone way off the rails for me in the years since, but man, he has at least one bona fide classic that I like more than the Romero original, and everyone could be pissed off at me for saying it, but I don't care. If I have to watch one of those two movies, it's not even a thought.
I'm not as crazy about Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Actually, his Dead trilogy, as most people are. Night of the Living Dead is a movie that needs to be seen, and Dawn of the Dead's whatever, and Day of the Dead really goes farther back for me. But I'm also in this weird zombie. I don't want zombies at all on anything. We just came out of like 15 years of zombies on everything. So maybe talk to me in the next decade or so.
Arguably, the last 2 years under lockdown felt like it anyway, right? So we kind of lived it. Anyway, so Scream made it into your top films. I'm going to throw something out there. I'm going to start at the top of my list. My favorite film of the year was Saloum, which you can watch right now on Shudder, a film from Senegal. Saloum is as unpredictable, as smart, as innovative, and because it's culturally so detached from what we're used to, it's fascinating. But the other thing is, it's just world-class filmmaking. It looks, sounds amazing. It does things that are surprising and cool. It has its own internal logic. It is intense as film gets. There's a dinner sequence in it. People talk about Pearl's dinner sequence. That is nothing compared to what happens in Saloom's dinner sequence. Just an amazing film. Did you get a chance to check it out?
I did not. A lot of the Shudder stuff I've missed because I haven't had Shudder for like a year. I know that sounds terrible, but I figure if I don't know, man. I get it other ways.
Well, then get it another way because it's amazing. And to my knowledge, it still does not have a physical release that I can find. So it's I think it's a landmark film. I think it might be the most creative horror film in a long time. And the fact that it's so different and the performances are so outrageously strong. It has a plot. It's a horror film with a plot, right? And it kind of does the From Dusk Till Dawn thing. Not vampires, but it does change up what genre it's in once in the film. But it does it in a way that on second watch, you're like, it's all already there. It's all already. I just didn't notice any of that. It's phenomenal.
That's always fun when you can go back and watch something a second time with a new perspective.
Yeah, it's an amazing film, and I hope everyone involved in that film gets to live out their filmmaking dreams based on it, because they didn't have all the resources to do everything they wanted. Yeah. It's an exceptional looking film. They did have they did use money for special effects, both practical and digital, but it's still low budget filmmaking. Saloum is amazing. What else did you see this year that you loved?
I'm wondering if you even saw this one, Fall. That's
I didn't. 9. I saw the trailer in theaters, and then it didn't seem to go to theaters.
It came to my theaters. That's strange, but it's. I tell you what, watch it, because if you have, do you have an aversion to heights?
Not really.
Okay. Well, I do. Like, I can't even get on my roof. It's a terrible, terrible thing that I go through. But watching that movie, like, you lose your fucking stomach. It's all stupid and avoidable. But once you're up there, you have a legit issue, right?
Isn't this the director of those shark movies? The 20 what it's not 28.
Scott Mann directed it. I don't know what else he's done.
He's if it's who I think he's like the king of situational horror, where people put themselves in a dumb position and then have to fight their way out.
Well, I'm good with that, dude. Like, because there's a lot of stupid people out there.
No, I'm fine with it too. I don't necessarily like those two Meters Down movies. I think they're both pretty much shit. But
no, man, he does stuff. I've never seen
my apologies, Fall Man.
The Tournament, Heist, Final Score, and Fall.
Okay. So my apologies to him then. I was under a incorrect assumption. Yeah, JT, 47 Meters Down. Both those films I friggin' hate. The second one's worse than the first. The big dumb CGI albino shark must be the dumbest thing ever. Well, I don't even want to get into it, but sharks don't even hunt by eyesight, so it doesn't even make a difference, but whatever.
But no, man, I dug it. It's a set piece movie. You're entirely on top of that fucking antenna for the runtime, and they make something out of it. It was worth watching. Of course, again, went in with no expectations. I don't watch trailers or anything anymore, because trailers can fucking destroy my expectation for a movie.
You know what I hate? That nothing creative has ever done with trailers anymore. I mean, the most creative you get is they film scenes during filming that aren't going to be in the movie that they intentionally put in the trailers to throw you off. That's as creative as it gets. Like Hitchcock was misdirecting and playing with the audience and talking directly to them. If you look at even later on, if you look at the trailers for something like the Blob remake, check that thing out. It tells you exactly what it is, but it doesn't give away anything. And that's a lost art, man.
How far did Black Adam make it up your list?
I didn't see Black Adam. That might surprise you.
I haven't seen it yet either. So.
That thing looked bad to me, even by DC standards, so I don't know.
It is fun watching the fallout, though.
Oh, whatever. You know, it's like everyone lost their jobs over there, and we're supposed to care. Meanwhile, like, you know, a Bed Bath and Beyond is going to fall into the abyss, and like thousands of our fellow Americans who are working
32,000.
Paying their bills paycheck to paycheck are going to be affected, and we're supposed to care about frickin' The Rock. I'm sorry, my world doesn't work that way. I mean, it would be maybe if it was like a studio with a great track record was failing, I might care about A24 going out of business or having to restructure. But the DC saying, "Oh, we're going to start over again because we screwed it up." Who cares? You screwed it up. Everyone should know this. I mean, you saw those movies, right? Or at least some of them. I don't care.
Jacob Cordenhouse asked about the Something in the Dirt. I have that on my computer right now. I haven't watched it yet, but it looks interesting.
I don't have it on my computer, but I have been recommended it several times, so I guess I need to make a point. I guess that should be said too. It's like I don't watch a movie every day of my life. I can't. A, I work. B, I have other obligations, such as, you know, writing for an hour a day, 2,000 words a day. You do that, suddenly you find yourself without the time to really attack. The other problem I have is that I have a better track record with a lot of the stuff that right now is warming me up, some of the indie stuff and the foreign stuff. And if I'm going to take a role on a movie, it most likely, unless I get a lot of really positive feedback, isn't your typical like American whatever. I mean, I can't. Like Megan, I'm not making it to the theater to see it. Why would I? I know I'm not going to like that movie. Pretty much. I mean, it could surprise me, but there'll be plenty of time to find that out. I don't need to rush to the theater to find it. So,
what did you hate this year? Did you have anything you hated, or you did that was like remarkable?
You know what? Here's the thing. Like, last year was kind of a weird year because I went to see as much back in theaters as I could. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean 2021. Because theaters were starting to creak open, and I tried to go see everything I could, and a lot of it was crap. So I made a pact with myself that if I knew going in it wasn't going to be good, I just wasn't good, or I wasn't going to enjoy it, I should say, because good is subjective. I was just not going to put myself through that. And it shocked a lot of people when I said things like, I'm not going to see Halloween Ends because I haven't liked one of those films in 25 years. Why would I do that to myself? And people kept saying, including very close friends, kept saying, "Oh, but you got it. It's a Halloween movie." And it's like, that is not exactly a scarcity. You know, I have seen a lot of those films in this point in my life. And to be honest with you, there's not that many I've enjoyed. Why would I continue to go down that road? So it doesn't have to be even a title like that. I just didn't roll the die on stuff that I was not probably the audience for.
Did you go see Bodies, Bodies, Bodies?
I did not, because that trailer made me angry.
I did see it, and it's my least favorite movie of the year. But that's what I was getting at. I wanted to see how you felt about that one.
I'm pretty sure it would be on my list of things that annoyed the hell out of me this year, but didn't see it. And that's the point. I'm not going to be that guy anymore that puts himself through stuff just so I can, I don't know, say I saw it, or just to have something to complain about, or argue with people who just blindly love. I'm not going to do any of that anymore. You love Halloween Ends? I'm so happy for you for loving it. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. Anything that makes people happy, that's legal, is good. It's just probably not for me. And that's okay. That's great, in fact, because it gives me the opportunity to talk to people about things that they might have missed, because that's where I'm spending my energy. And whether they take me up on my challenge to see something from Senegal or the Netherlands or India, that's on them. But at least now they'll have the option, because it'll be in their mental Rolodex, right? They can flip to that card when if they ever feel like I feel about American cinema right now.
Yeah. Don't Worry, Darling was up there too.
I wanted to like that thing, but I didn't.
It turned out to be exactly what the fuck I thought it was going to be, and that's what pissed me off.
Yeah.
Like forget the twist. It's the message around that movie that I saw coming from a mile away, and it was preachy and fucking self-important, and I just had.
It looks like it was pretty to look at, though.
Okay, I mean Frances Pugh or whatever her name is, gorgeous. I love everything she's in. I try to watch it, man. Not that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, even like The Menu, which I wanted to see because I like some of the actors in. I just couldn't bring myself to pull the trigger on, because I'm going to have access to that. I mean, things are in theaters, and then 4 weeks later, they're available at home. I'm not saying I don't go to theater. I do go to. I went to theater a lot this year. I'm very fortunate to have theaters near me that play international cinema, and smaller films as well. If anyone is not using Showtimes.com, you can go on Showtimes, write horror in the search engine, and it'll show you every horror movie playing in the country for the next 3 weeks.
Oh, nice.
Including repositories showing. So if you've always said, "Oh, I've always wanted to see Candyman on the big screen," if it's playing somewhere, you won't miss your opportunity. You might have to fly to go see it, but I use that a lot.
I'm not that guy.
No, but I'm lucky enough that I'm in a pretty heavily populated area. So if something's making the rounds, there's a chance that I have it within 40 minutes of me. So I've been able to.
I'd love to do stuff like that, man. I'd love to be in Red Bank, New Jersey next month when they're going to show all the Clerks movies.
Yep.
In a row. They don't do that here in Owensboro. They don't, believe it or not.
I do believe it, actually.
The cultural hub that is Kentucky.
But you might get a Mutilator 1 and 2 double feature at some point. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Moloch is a movie that came out this year that I absolutely loved. I think it's the best folk horror movie ever made. And I'm a guy who used to stand up and scream when people would talk about Christopher Lee movies. If you didn't mention Wicker Man, I wanted to beat you up. I love Wicker Man to this day. It's awesome. But damn it, Moloch is good. Like, that movie is... If you like folk horror...
I don't like folk horror all that much. There's very few and far between that I enjoy.
Well, I still recommend at some point giving it a roll, because I think you might be pleasantly surprised. Did you like The Dark and the Wicked?
I enjoyed it for what it was, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of in that vein, although it has a heavy folk horror undergirding. But I would say that would be what I consider most similar to. Towards the end of the film, you get some Hereditary vibes as well, but just an amazing flick. And again, from the Netherlands, so it's in Dutch. You're gonna have to read some subtitles, but the reward is it isn't the thing you've seen, twice a month for the last 20 years. It's not Megan, right? What else did you love this year?
Well, it just came up, so we can go to The Menu.
Okay.
And that was one that I caught when it hit HBO Max. So I did see it this year.
Okay.
But it was a film from last year. But that's a fun little movie, and that was one that I don't watch the trailer for it if you haven't. Just go in and let it happen, because you're going to come up with all kinds of opinions on what that movie is about, and it's about none of them.
Yeah, I mean, Anna Joy Taylor has been one of the bright lights in acting over the last 10 years, probably from The Witch onward. She's always good. Like, she is. And what I like is she's obviously a very attractive woman, but she's also unconventional.
Her eyes are way too far apart. That was the only thing that distracted me. She's got one on each head like a flounder.
Yeah, but it works. I think it's very cool because she's incredibly distinct. You wouldn't,
Yeah.
you'd never, if you cast her in a movie, you would never have to do what I call the purple scarf. Put a piece of clothing on a character so that everyone can remember who that character is.
Yeah.
Like she can do that. You're not going to mistake her for anyone else on the cast. And the fact that we have to do things like that tell you that all of our actors kind of look the same now, right? They're in this strict mold.
Side of the head, steak. Sorry.
The fact that she managed to even be successful today just through talent is remarkable.
Ralph Fiennes fucking kills it in that movie too, dude. Playing like a Gordon Ramsay-esque character.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's one of those guys that doesn't really know what to do in Hollywood.
Dan, you are right. And Jacob, that is the prettiest cheeseburger ever put to screen in the menu. If it's remembered for anything, that is the best looking cheeseburger that's ever been made.
Now I'm gonna have to see it just for the cheeseburger, because I got to tell you, Jersey diners make some goddamn great cheeseburgers. And not that I eat the cheese because I can't, but
Jamie, I didn't say she's not beautiful. I just said that whoever put her eyes on wasn't paying attention. There's probably a jig or a template you can put on there to make sure this doesn't happen.
I don't think I'm going to weigh in on that.
Just imagining her with you.
So here's one that I've spoken about way too much this year, but I'm going to speak about again, and that's Decade.
I missed it. I missed it by a couple hours.
I know, and that's horrific. But so we complain all the time that good action films are just not made anymore, that our action films basically all have Liam Neeson or superheroes in them. Well, Decade is the real deal. In fact, it's like everything you love about action films from bygone decades on absolute steroids. Also takes big swings that you're not expecting it to. Kangana Renault is just like unbelievably good in the lead role. The villains are the nastiest action film villains of all time. It's bloody, it's nasty, it's crazy, it's funny. It's all over the place. It's 2.5 hours of just pure action film ecstasy. If you like John Wick, Agent Agnew could kick his ass any day of the week.
Whoa, that's all there is to it.
No, it's not. If you've seen the film.
Jessica asked me how I missed it. This was Lauren brought it with him while he was in Lexington, and it was the evening I was leaving. So we had dinner, and I left and went back home, and the guys that stayed watched Decade.
And screamed and yelled and shouted at the scream, and Christian lost his shit over this musical score at many points. It was. Have you ever seen Terror in the Isles, the compilation clip movie? Yeah, so they have this whole thing about people should be talking to the movies in the movie theaters, right?
Yeah.
Everyone was talking to Decade because it's just this outrageous movie. And it if you like big action, I mean, it's just, there's nothing else out there like it. It's just huge.
It's one I'll check up on this year.
I'll help you out with that.
Appreciate it.
Yep. What's next for you?
For me, I'm not going in any particular order. I'm just hitting off the movies I liked last year. So I'm going to switch it up from horror and go to Clerks 3. Because you should watch that, Lauren. I feel like you'd like it.
You may be right, you may not. I don't know.
It was such a coming home for Kevin Smith for me, because his last 15 years minimum have been pretty bad. And I was the guy that was going to every one of those movies if I had a chance to, going to see him bring those movies around, just because I love Kevin Smith and I love his product. And I'd gotten to a point after Yoga Hosers, it was like, I literally cannot continue to support this guy and his endeavors anymore, because they've gotten so, I can't be the apologist forever when it gets so bad. He does Jay and Silent Bob reboot. That's supposed to be, coming back to form. It's not. It goes in the opposite direction a lot. So I had no expectations for Clerks 3 being any good, but Clerks 2 is probably one of my favorite movies of all time because of the subject matter and what I was going through when I saw it. And that's what Kevin Smith does. He takes he does well, is he takes these shared experiences that we all have uniquely in our own lives, but we all have these same problems, and he amplifies it and shows you it's not just your problem. We all deal with these. And that's what he did with Clerks 3. It was another, like, a point in your life, questions that you're asking yourself that you probably don't put out there, that we all deal with. His movies can connect people in a way unlike just about anybody else's if they're done correctly.
So my challenge with Kevin Smith has always been kind of the same thing. It's that I loved Clerks when it came out. Saw it in the theater. I loved it. Mallrats came out. I liked Mallrats a lot. I think a lot of people scream that they love Mallrats. I mean, I had a weird experience with it because I saw it at the Cineplex Odeon in the Menlo Park Mall, which is the mall is actually mentioned in the film. So there you go. Yeah, he says it's better than
is that the Dirt
Menlo
Mall?
Park Mall? No, although I can tell you a story about the Dirt Mall. So in the movie, he says, the Easter Bunny at the Menlo Park Mall is better. And I was sitting in the Menlo Park Mall watching the movie when that line read. So the Dirt Mall was actually the US 1 flea market, named after the highway that it sits on. It was a flea market that was built on top of what had been a graveyard, and they moved all the graves except one because they couldn't find the family to get permission. So they built the parking lot around the actual gravesite. Well, it's not a flea market anymore, so you can't visit it as a flea market. But what you can do is go to the AMC theater that now sits on top of what was the US 1 flea market. And the grave is still in the parking lot. So she's actually risen up. They've built walls retaining because they actually cut the ground level. So there's a brick wall leading up, and it's gated, and her tombstone's up there, and she's still up there.
That's pretty dope, man.
You can go see a movie and then go visit a dead girl.
See, like, they should do that with one of us, right? Like, why does that girl get it? I bet she wasn't even a moviegoer.
No, I think she might have been. No, I think it's
pre-movies.
Nah, it's not pre-movies, but it would have been early. It would have been early in the movie experience. But yeah, no, it's always a cool thing to because no one believes that like literally something like that exists, and probably anywhere but Jersey it wouldn't. But yeah, that's where the Dirt Mall in Mallrats at. But starting with Chasing Amy, really, I started to lose my love for Kevin Smith. Like, there's things I like about that movie. There's things I like about Dogma. But part of like what was special about Clerks and Mallrats to a slightly lesser extent started ebbing away from me. Part of it is that relatability, I think. Maybe he should have taken longer between the movies.
He can write. He can write his ass off as far as real sounding dialogue. Actually, better than Tarantino can do it.
Well, I was just going to say he can, but it's stylized to Kevin Smith. Everyone kind of sounds like Kevin Smith. The same way Tarantino, everyone kind of sounds like Tarantino.
But we both know, like, when you're watching a Tarantino movie, it's real life adjacent, right? Like, that's how people talk in. You could if you heard it
70s exploitation movies, yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. It's reality adjacent. His movies.
And I'm like I said before, I don't need internal logic to invade cinema and to enjoy it. You know, I mean, there's a million ways that Die Hard doesn't happen, right? I mean, in the real world, it's not accurate. Or for that matter, something like Manhunter, the good version of Red Dragon. Even that novel plays very loose with the rules of how police investigation would actually happen. I'm fine with all that. I go into a movie, I just want to forget my life and just watch the movie and enjoy that world for as long as they'll give me. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. I always know when a film is failing when all the writerly stuff comes up and I'm like, wait, why did they do that? That doesn't make a goddamn bit of sense. I know they lost me then. And I won't lie, like the later Kevin Smith films, like he completely lost me.
It gets really bad after, Jacob brought out Zack and Miri, Clerks 3, Zack and Miri, and Red State would have been a place to stop. I say Clerks 2, after Clerks 2, there's a definite drop, and then you get Red State, which is a high point. It showed us that Kevin Smith could like actually maybe direct a movie that was moving. And he did well at it. The characters are well written. John Goodman fucking kills it in that movie. And after Red State, it's just a fucking cliff. Just falls straight off.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen Yoga Hosers.
Don't. There's no reason to.
No, I looked at the trailer and said, this is so not for me. And the Walrus movie I've never seen because, honestly, the 1-2 punch of later Kevin Smith and Johnny Depp it might just kill me. So probably not doing that ever in life.
You're not missing anything. But I will say that if the mood strikes you and you run across it, I do think you will have redeeming words to say about Clerks 3.
I will keep it under advisement, and I certainly have availability to the movie. So,
yeah.
So I want to talk about the next film I want to talk about is one that I just recently saw. I mean, I saw it in 2023, but it was from last year. It's a film that I tried to go to the theater and see, but unfortunately work got in the way of it, and then the movie was out of the theater before I got to it. And it is an Indian film called Masooda. That's Masooda, and it was sold as kind of just a possession film, kind of an Exorcist ripoff. And well, I'm down for that, sure.
I mean, yeah, it's a good premise, right? Like,
right. I mean, I don't need to see the endless American annual January release of, that possession film that we get, whether it's Pray for the Devil or whatever. But I'm down to see what another culture would do with it. What I wasn't prepared for was one of the most epic horror films I've ever seen that asks really, really big questions. And I think that's more in line with what Blatty's intentions were with the two films that he had something to do with, which were based on his two novels, Exorcist and Legion, which Legion is my favorite novel of all time. But Masooda does something interesting because rather than talk about the problem of evil, why would a God that is good allow evil to exist? Instead, it asks, why would you allow evil to exist if you have an ability to control it as well?
Well, that's interesting.
And by putting it back on humanity, what it manages to do is make the supernatural stuff so much more impactful. And you have to see it to see what I'm talking about. But when you're talking about it's gods and devils and this stuff up here,
is it getting at evil acts of humanity and power?
It's
evil entities.
It's not about power. It's about when. Okay, let me. This is not the example in the movie, but it's close. If you walk down the street and you see a family that are not making their rent and are going to be evicted, what do?
Yeah, you just keep walking.
Do you do nothing? Well, then you're answering the question of why does God, if he's good, allow evil to exist, right? Because if you're going to hold a supernatural being to a higher standard than yourself, you got to kind of just settle on the fact that, evil is evil and it's prevalent. It's probably the default position. The movie does some really, really incredibly interesting and intricate things, but in a way that's so plain stated, you don't see it coming. And also the first half hour of this movie feels like a sitcom. It lulls you into thinking it's a different type of movie than it is. And then it gets dark and it gets complex and it challenges you. And 2 hours and 40 minutes go by and it feels like maybe an hour and a half, maybe. It's an amazing film. And there's an entire movement in India that's been going on for the last 3 years or so. Maybe a little bit longer than that. They're just completely destroying all expectations of what can be done in the horror genre because they don't have this need to apply to appeal to everyone. They're willing to take chances and do creative things, and sometimes it misfires horribly, but at least then you also know that when they hit, my God, it's a bullseye. So Masooda, I really, really recommend it. I think it's on Z5, but check Netflix. It might be there. Definitely worth your time. You do have to set aside a chunk of time, though.
Ooh,
so
that's another thing that's bothering me about newer movies now is these 2 hour plus runtimes on everything.
So I wonder why we feel that way, because I feel that way too about domestic product. I'm wondering if it's just the quality makes it feel longer than it is, right? Like, 'cause 2 hours, honestly, in the 70s would have been a normal runtime. No one really, I'm yet to hear anyone say The Godfather 2 is too long a movie. You know, but when you're talking about that great of a film, or Scarface, or Close Encounters is 2 hours, I believe.
I think very few stories need that runtime. And most of the time when you're getting a runtime that's beefy like that, let's say 2.5 hours, that's where I really start feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
You could have cut 30 minutes from the movie. Easy.
I think in the case of Masuda, there's an overall effect that it uses its act structure very deliberately, and it has an overall effect. But I'm agreeing with you. Like, a lot of times, like, from the life of me, I don't understand why a Star Wars movie would ever have to be over 2 hours long.
Right?
That makes no sense to me
You have
whatsoever.
information that you need to convey to the viewer. The end goal is just to get that information to them. If you pad it out, it makes it feel like a drug. Like it feels like it just
Yeah,
lags
sure.
on.
And it's going to come down to a bunch of guys with guns shooting at other guys with guns in one location, and two guys with swords in another location having a duel every fucking time. So who cares?
And it's only permissible when it's just if that's the centerpiece of the movie. Like you have this giant fight sequence. If that's kind of like the thing your movie's built around, then give me that. But if not, then I'm not really interested.
Yeah. But it's interesting because Indian cinema tends to be longer, with exceptions like Game Overs, or an hour and 35 minutes.
You got to have time in for that fucking musical number, dude. You
Well,
gotta.
no, only if it's a film from the north. If it's a film, if it's in Tamil or Telugu, then you don't get those. But I just think that the quality makes a big difference. I think if you're having a good time, the runtime doesn't hurt you nearly as bad. But I think it's having a really good time in the theater is a rare thing in America right now. Unfortunately,
I'll give you that.
um, I can't imagine from like the idea of like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a lean 90 minutes, I believe. Can you imagine that movie being any longer? Like, why? It gets everything it needs to do,
No,
right?
yeah, you're right. That's what I'm saying. If you write it correctly and you shoot it correctly, you can convey all the information you need to without needless information.
I think for something like that, it's definitely true. I don't think it's true for everything, but like seriously, those Fast and Furious films are over 2 hours.
Yeah, what in there is going on that we need to know about?
Well, girls grinding against cars.
I mean, I get that, but there's other places for that. We talked about this earlier.
I do think that it would be great if America just took a lesson and just tried to make really tight, creative, bold films and just laid off of all the other concerns. But I have no confidence they ever will. So that's why I'm looking beyond the borders. It's not that I want to not love American cinema. It's just that I kind of don't anymore.
Well, my next pick is actually a foreign film. So
Oh,
there you go. Troll,
okay.
the Norwegian Netflix movie. That was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Another, again, it was one of those things, 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't sleep. What is this Troll movie? It was a bad dub job on it. But, I mean, if you can get behind, past that, it's not bad.
No, that's the whole point. Like, maybe it has to be 3 o'clock in the morning to roll the die on something like that. But aren't you glad
Oh,
you
absolutely.
did?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. Did you see that one?
I did. It didn't make my top list, but I had fun with it.
I think it's making my top list because it was so out of left field for me, right? Like, man, I had a good time with that. I liked how the trolls were mountains. That's why you can see them. Like, I really dug that. And the situations that allowed where the guy's standing right in front of the troll, like when he wakes up and shit, like it felt like a monster movie.
Yeah, and again, like, why couldn't America make that movie?
It's a very Americanized movie.
Yeah, but it couldn't have been made here.
No, but I feel the same way about Trolls Hunter too, that came out years ago.
Yeah,
It's another Norwegian troll movie that's just awesome.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like the horror should be a great way for us to explore other cultures because the folklore and ghost stories and all that, like, kind of should be fascinating to us in the same way that like Viking and Greek mythology are fascinating to us, right? Because it's a world we can explore and maybe it has something to say that we wouldn't get to on our own because we haven't had those experiences. Fear is a great motivator for us to watch this stuff because maybe you learn something important. Like if the stakes are high in drama, there should be a compulsion to watch it and learn from it. As stupid as that might seem, like, I've said it a million times, but like, what is Michael Myers but fear of urban crime? I mean,
That's really what it is. Home
it
invasion.
is.
Somebody
Yeah,
being in your home that's not supposed to be there.
right. And I mean, that's not how the drama plays out, and it's structurally, but that's why we're watching.
But I
That's
would
why we
also say
relate.
if you've never been not violated, but violated in that sense of either your car's been broken into, your home's been broken into when you're there, there's a lingering feeling about that somebody was in a familiar place to you that wasn't supposed to be there while you weren't there. And
Oh yeah.
that's extremely unsettling.
So there's this concept of the social safety net that if we just do the right things, if we just be active and we moral, if you're a churchgoer, maybe you think that's part of it. If you're a civic person, if you send your check to the police every year to get your sticker on your car, that you'll be safe. And reality is all that is a mirage.
Yeah, it's an illusion.
Like anyone can be victimized by crime at any time, or not even by crime. 2 weeks ago when we had that snowstorm, well, it wasn't a snowstorm, it was really an ice storm. A tree was down in the road and I drove into it because I couldn't see it until it was too late.
Ooh.
Now, I mean, listen, everyone's okay, and like my car has a few issues cosmetically, but
Yeah.
no one did that to me.
It just happened.
It's a thing that happened. But do you feel a certain way about it afterwards? Do you feel like, why did this happen to me? Sure. The tree is probably thinking, man, why did I have to fall?
Yeah.
So it's all about perspective, and just realizing that safety net's not there is ultimately the fear. And that's what it is. Like, take a job as a babysitter. You're supposed to, at the worst case, deal with an annoying kid for the night, not get slashed to pieces actually in that movie, more people get strangled to death than anything else.
Well,
So
you've got like 3 minutes on average before anyone can get to you in the
Oh,
best
yeah.
case of scenarios. So
Absolutely.
3 minutes is a long time if it's just you and somebody that wants to harm you.
Right. And that's why I think in general, the monster movie, which is what like, let's put the word horror aside for a moment, because it's really all about monsters. Some of them look like humans, but the idea of like the saber-toothed tiger to the ancient man it's the same concept of, there isn't that safety net. No matter what we build in our society, you'll never be safe enough. And I think that is why these movies work, is because if you've ever been through any trauma, or if you've ever lost someone that you shouldn't have lost, trying to grapple with that in this very coded format. Again, a million times I'll say this, but horror is not therapeutic. It is not medicine. It will not get you through bad times. Anyone claiming that was true is probably still got work to do, right? It's a good way, however, to get a vocabulary around the trauma and be able to explore it in a way that at least you can know that other people kind of feel the way you feel because they made this thing.
Yeah.
But it's not going to help you. It's not going to solve anyone's problems. And that's, I always want to make that distinction, because I hear from a lot of people about, oh, horror is therapeutic, and I was through this bad event in my life, and this movie helped me through it. I'm like, dude, don't do that. That's not healthy. That's not a good idea.
For me, it's more of what scares people. You know what I mean? Like, why am I scared of this? The analysis of it when watching a horror movie is like, why is this scary? It goes back to Michael Myers. It's that safety net that's not actually there.
Sure, and it doesn't have to even be. Again, horror is a field that deals with mortality and morality. It doesn't have to just be the guy who's going to come into your house and kill or rape or steal from you.
Absolutely not.
So Amityville Horror is about not being able to make your mortgage payment. And it's explicitly about that. I mean, the beginning of the film, there's a wedding in dowry that gets lost. They buy too much house, a wedding dowry gets lost, and they end up having to like run screaming in the middle of the night from the house. The house itself, whether it's haunted or not, is irrelevant. It's about the social pressures of I want that middle class dream. I want to be that homeowner. I want that upper mobility, even if it's going to destroy us. And that's what the Amityville horror is. So like real world horror of real world themes should always be the basis of these exaggerated nightmares. It's just
Exactly. That should always be the core. Even though what you're looking at is so fantastical and out there should be a core issue with what you're actually dealing with.
I'm gonna. Can we derail off the main subject for just a second because I really want to go down another avenue here.
Go for it.
So this is gonna piss some people off, I think. But you ever notice that the mayor's right in Jaws?
No, he's totally right.
So on one hand, you have like a shark is eating people, and that's fucking awful. But it's a summer town. What happens if they do close the beach? What happens to all those businesses and all those employees that won't be able to literally survive winter?
Well, that goes back to everybody has the answer until they're presented with all the facts, right? Like you look at it, you look at people telling companies, these billion-dollar companies, how to fix themselves. Well, it's because you're not dealing with all the issues that are there.
Right.
That mayor was dealing with all of his issues. He has a town he has to run, and sharks happen. We know that. Unfortunately, we didn't know this shark had a family lineage of serial killing. We wouldn't know that for 3 more movies. Yeah. Had he been presented with that information, possibly we could have done something different.
And it comes down to this idea that you have these 3 men of different ages, which unfortunately the film does one thing that the novel does better, which is that Hooper never seems as young as he's supposed to be in the movie because they hired an actor who was about, I don't know, 8 years the senior of the character. In fact, even in the movie, he's constantly referred to as young man, and he seems like, I don't know, not
very
young enough.
aged.
And that's important to the novel because, of course, Ellen Brody has an affair with him in the novel, and that's not in the movie. So, and that the idea of a younger man, a more vital man, the idea that Brody ultimately goes out onto the ocean, which he's terrified of, to protect his home. So he's wrong about pressuring the mayor. The mayor's like making the right move in a sterile environment, but the mayor's not willing to go out and actually try and fix the problem.
Yeah.
And he's actually willing to put his flesh on the line for his family and the town. So it's like, what's great about the film is there's 3 generations represented, from the guy who does this, who kills man-eaters for a living, to the guy who kind of moved out of the city because something happened there, and that's intentionally kind of vague, and that's kind of cool, right? And he moved onto an island, makes no sense for a guy who's afraid of water because he's trying to escape something. And then the young guy who's had his life handed to him all, and he's rich and overeducated, and they all go out on the boat. So you have this microcosm of masculinity in 1978 going out on a boat to fight the boogeyman, basically.
Yeah.
What is this boogeyman that came to destroy the town's livelihood and eat a few tourists? Because you also notice that except for the kid, everyone else who gets eaten is pretty much tourists.
That shark is motivated by revenge and bloodthirst, Lauren.
So the point I'm just trying to make is like every small town that's ever gone through like real recession, and that's everyone that ever survived like 1979 or,
hell, if you're born at the right time, you can go through all kinds of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's the shark, and that's why it works, because the stakes do feel real.
But what do you think that movie looks like if that shark worked in the water? I've thought about that a lot.
I think it looks like Jaws 2. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I love Jaws 2. I think it's a great film. It's my Jaws movie. It's not as good as the original, but it's my Jaws movie. But it's a different sort of film. It is a slasher film with a shark. That's it. I can't make I can't tell you what that movie is about the way I can Jaws, because there's not that much there. But there doesn't need to be that much there because they're making a slasher film.
Yeah.
The first film is not.
What that makes me wonder is, was all that nuance constructed out of because they couldn't put on screen what they needed to?
Well,
or would it have been much more underneath, much more subtext if you had, action shots of this shark
I,
underwater doing whatever it's doing.
I always feel like it's like a little bit overplayed because the shark is on screen a whole lot in that movie.
But it's not moving. We don't really have like underwater. We get like half of a shark at a time.
Yeah, I mean, you get the real shark footage of the cage, attacking the miniature cage and stuff at the end,
Mhm.
but even in the water, you see a lot more of the shark than people pretend. They're like, oh, you don't see the shark at all, you just see the fin. That's not true. But what I would say is, yeah, if the shark had worked, um, you would have had more like shots of like the shark coming more out of the water, like he does in the second film. You know, does that make it a weaker film? It might. But I gotta say, a lot of the stuff that people think happened because the shark didn't work was already in the novel. So the barrels were always in the novel. So they're not a substitute for the shark working. So I think it's a combination of things. I also just think that movie is blessed with some great performances that sell some dialogue that in other hands wouldn't probably play.
Well, I put it in the category of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you take everyone exactly the same from that crew and put them out there a year earlier, a year later, you come back with a vastly, vastly different movie.
Yeah, and I also think if 5 years earlier than that, the movie would never have been greenlit because it would have been seen like there's no way to make this movie.
Yeah.
And 5 years after, the studio would be so up the filmmaker's ass that he wouldn't be able to make that movie. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a time and a place. I also think Jaws 2 is a time and a place.
I
I mean,
like Jaws too.
it,
Steak said it earlier. 3 is about the only one I won't watch.
3 and 4 are both bad films, but 3 is it's weird. It depends why you want to dislike the movie, which one's worse. But they're both pretty miserable,
No, they're
especially if
bad,
you
but
compare them
it's
to the
just
first two.
the fun you get off of the revenge is a completely different. I don't watch them in the same reverence I watch
No,
Jaws.
no. I will say to my dying breath that Universal should have bought The Shallows and just titled it Jaws 5, because I think that movie is as good a shark movie as we're gonna get ever again in our life. So
Wow, we went down a road there, didn't we?
yeah, look at that. So I just want to list off a few more films that I really loved this year before we call it a night. And if you have other titles, you throw them out too. El Paramo, The Wasteland, or The Beast, depending on which translated title you like. There's a film from Spain. It is the slowest of slow burns, but my God, did it tickle all the right parts of me. It's great. It's seriously for slow burns, psychological slash um, apocalyptic horror, which is a weird combination. It just works like no one's
Psychological
business.
apocalyptic horror.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a film where it's accurate to say not much happens, but that's kind of part of the point. And it's just a film full of dread. I was so happy when people around the community took my advice to check it out, whether it's your Dan Shines or your Pizzas, and everyone seems to come away saying like you got to have patience with it, but it's brilliant. And I agree, it's unbelievable. I really loved Men this year. I think that movie came out. A lot of people thought it was going to be some kind of political tract, and it's not that at all.
Very boring to me.
Oh, I
Very
love
boring to
that
me.
movie. Love it. It's great.
But we know
Um,
how I feel about that kind of stuff too. So
right, right. I think once you kind of decode the film and watch it a second time, you just see how like everything is just so perfect, unreal. Uh, Blur. This was a film that got a surprise release. It had been announced as a film, but it got thrown out in December. It's a Indian remake of the Spanish film Julia's Eyes, which is one of those films that I've always liked, but I could never love. Um, but the filmmaker in excuse me, but in this film they decided to film the movie as a visual tribute to Lucio Fulci. So you have a remake of a Spanish thriller being filmed like the Italian Maestro, and also starring Tapsi Pannu, who of course is my favorite final girl of all time for her performance in Game Over. Um, and she actually was also she had Dubara, which is a remake of the French film Mirage came out this year starring her, and that's another one of the films that I think is absolutely essential to get out there and see. She had a great year in the genre, and that's kind of a dark science fiction film, Dabara. But Blur is amazing. If you're an aficionado of Lucio Fulci, you need to see it because you'll be struck by how it literally looks like Lucio Fulci is alive and directing a remake of Julia's Eyes.
Who gets it in the face? Who gets it in the eye?
There is someone
Right?
does,
Right?
and it is a film about blindness. So
Yeah, that was telegraphed, buddy. You didn't see that one coming.
oh yeah, no, and it does. It quite visually happens. The Cursed, this year's theatrical werewolf movie, loved it. I prefer it to Howling or American Werewolf. The werewolf genre is a little weird in that it doesn't have that many classics, and I think The Cursed is as good as anything that has been thrown at it. I think it's better than Dog Soldiers. I just think it's great. A really cool original take on the subject, but also really classy and smart, well acted, handsomely filmed. There's nothing you can't go wrong. Wow.
Woo, got it.
Wow, something exploded. Can't go wrong with Kirsten. Hatching, a film from Finland about a girl who discovers an egg in the woods and lets it hatch, and it kills a lot of people, maybe.
Dope.
Amazing film. Really cool, really uncomfortable. I like uncomfortable movies, and it's definitely that. Again, subtitles, but who the hell cares? It's strong. Final thing I'm going to throw at you guys is Millie, a film I've covered on this channel extensively. A film about a girl who works at a fast food restaurant who gets locked in an industrial freezer overnight and has to figure out how to survive.
Oh, nice.
It's survival horror at its absolute best. It's actually not a horror film. It's a suspense film. We just don't make suspense films anymore, so we don't recognize it as a genre.
I got a soft spot for the movies where somebody's trapped somewhere they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
That scene with Fall.
It's a remake of an earlier Telugu language film called Helen, which is not nearly as good. It's also based on a real incident, so that's kind of eye-opening. But the coolest thing about the movie is it does something really smart, which is that it lets you get ahead of the movie as a viewer. Like you're going to come up with all kinds of solutions, and it's going to let you stew on those solutions for 5 or 6 minutes, and then she's going to do every one of them, and you're going to see why it didn't work.
Well, that's a mark of a good movie in that sense, because that's the problem with these people trapped in places. Everybody's going, "Oh, I know how to get out of that."
Right.
You just do this and this.
Yeah, and this film it lets you live. It's smart enough to let you live with it, and also the setup of why no one. It plausibly sets up a scenario where no one really realizes the danger she's in.
Yeah,
and that's so cool. There's some secondary characters that are not villains, but they're just self-centered assholes that completely plausibly create more of a stumbling block for her safety. It's so good. Millie is probably it's low on my list of the best of the year, but I'm gonna say for the type of movie it is, it's as good as anything that's been made in that genre. It's a masterpiece too.
And where is this one from?
It's from India. All said, like India did very well on my list this year. On my little top 10, it 4 films came from India, 1 from Senegal, 1 from the Netherlands, 1 from Spain, and then we have the US UK collaborative effort of men, and The Cursed is the sole only US production that made my top 10 this year. Usually there's like 4 films from overseas, but this year all the energy was behind the 4, and maybe I just made more of an effort to actually seek out movies, but I also looked at what was coming out theatrically in America, and yeah, no.
I understand that.
What else did you love?
Barbarian was up there for me. Again, I went into that movie blind. Pearl, X, the stuff that's on everybody's list, really.
Loved Pearl.
I can't wait for Maxine.
As long as Maxine is more a Pearl than X, I'm good.
Ask me on a given day which one I like more, and I'll tell you a different one.
I get you, and there's a lot of things I like about X a lot, but Pearl doesn't have anything that I roll my eyes at, and there is stuff I roll my eyes at in X, so that it has to win for that. My hope for Maxine is that they continue the character drama of Pearl, and just take it to the next chapter of her life.
It'll be Maxine's life this time.
Well, sure. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that could be very cool.
Anything
else?
Not really. Like I said, all my stuff was stuff that everybody's going to put on theirs.
So Barbarian, I just I liked it. I just liked the first half of it a lot more than the second half, and none of it makes a bit of sense really. But I think the first half was really cool. I liked the distrust it built. I loved paranoia is one of those things that's hard to do well in film, and I felt the first quarter of that film did a lot of situational paranoia really well, and I give it massive points for that. Once it becomes a more traditional monster movie, I'm a lot less interested in it. It didn't do anything wrong. It's just I've kind of seen that film before, so. And I'm not sure if I think at this point I don't like Justin Long as an actor.
Really? I like Justin.
Yeah. Long. I don't know. It's just I don't know. I don't really want to get into it. It's just I think he's very much an actor of his generation. Let's put it there. We know how good he was in that Die Hard movie he was in, right?
It's the last watchable Die Hard.
Kinda. So overall, what would you think of 2022?
2022 was a good year, man. Not just for movies, but for Jonathan, it was a good year. So, therefore, I will look on it fondly.
So, Jonathan, I gotta say, I think people that in this community don't really know really much about our relationship.
No.
And maybe that's a little bit by design, but so we come from very different backgrounds, but we're actually frighteningly similar people.
In step, for a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff, including stuff that probably we both wish weren't.
That nobody wants, right? But
exactly. And it's been funny over the last 2 years. We've had a lot of ups and downs and turmoil in the community and health scares and all that, and we always seem to be kind of riding the same track. And I gotta say, man, you're a brother. You're definitely a key member of what I call the community. I really think we need to do more of these things together here, man.
Because we have different discussions with each other than we do in other places.
It's true,
and
I think people would care, right?
Yeah, I think that's what everybody wants to see, right? Is what we can. I look for places to talk about shit differently a lot, but
yeah. So I don't know where that plays out, whether we do that on this channel, your channel, or, your place or mine, or if we find somewhere else. There had been an attempt to try and create something for more dialogue, but I think we're going to have to figure that out on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just how the die has rolled. I wouldn't mind bringing in some other people at other points for other discussions, but mainly I just want to spend more time with the people who want to have real discussions about real things.
Exactly. And Steak says it's because we're both members of the Lollipop Guild. Is why we have such a common.
Did we ever settle who's actually shorter?
You're shorter than me. I do know that for sure.
Okay.
Just a bit, but you are shorter than me.
I feel like there's some confirmation bias in
that.
No,
but we can all say that Slaughterport is shorter than both of us.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
No hate, Jake. We're all short, buddy. It's just about how much.
I'll just point out that Charles Manson and Hitler were both shorter than us, so whatever.
Yeah.
Both pretty fearsome people. All right, so I want to thank everyone who watched tonight. There was a lot of you out there, kind of like a shocking amount of lot out there, actually. One last thing, there's this thing that happened to me the end, right around the holiday, and if you haven't already bought a book, you really should. Have a good night, guys.
In 1977, news anchorman Virgil Meadowlark had some kind of breakdown on national television. Started babbling, speaking in tongues. The released a press release saying he'd had a stroke. Whatever happened, he never went back to broadcasting. Instead, he disappeared from public life for 3 years. Then, in 1980, he published a book, Perihelion. Bestseller right from the word go, which, by the way, is the first word of the first chapter. Go find yourself. It didn't stay just a book for all that long. Readers became converts. They pooled their money and bought a town, Meadowlark's childhood home, Badger, Wisconsin, and renamed it Perihelion. I run a company that does impossible things. Sometimes with words and smiles, sometimes with Kevlar vests and AR-15s. It all depends on the job. For this one, the Perihelion job, we're going to need more than communication skills and good aim. We're gonna need a fucking miracle.
Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff.
What? Wait. What?
I watched like 3 movies from 2021.